From the man on the ground, welcome back Newsmax Chief Washington correspondent John Gizzi, live from the Hawkeye State. John, you're looking good in the Hawkeye State. How's everybody looking and thinking right now? Do you get a sense of where everybody's going right now in hours before they step in the room?
Up to a point, Ed, and I certainly can gather from the people coming into the Juice Company here in Des Moines, a very fine eatery, that they are making their stops to get a little juice, a treat, and then they're heading to caucus in a very few minutes. My guess is this: Ted Cruz is rallying his people. He has 9,000 volunteers. He has a good on-the-ground game. Trump has emotion. He has a lot of spirit. I was in John Wayne's hometown of Winterset yesterday, and it would seem it was unanimously for Trump. You'd think he was the Duke himself, quite honestly. But Marco Rubio apparently had a very strong surge in the end. He's running third in two major polls, Des Moines Register and Quinnipiac. And as one person who's neutral in the race told me, it seems as though the establishment of the party has moved toward him. So watch for a strong third place showing by Rubio.
Now, John, Sunday on the Newsmax.com website, you had an interview with Marco Rubio basically saying that he will do well in Iowa. Is it not to the point right now? Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, people like that, they know they're not going to win. This is going to be Trump or Cruz, regardless of what happens here. But somebody like Rubio actually could do very well if they finish third at this point, because Iowa is not the end game, John, correct?
Oh, it's certainly not. Within 1 week, we'll be in what Theodore White famously referred to as the snows of New Hampshire. And at that point, we'll see a different game. John Kasich runs second to Donald Trump in most polls. But remember, if the Donald loses in Iowa or has an unimpressive showing, his support in New Hampshire would melt. And I bet you never thought I'd use the word melt when I talked about New Hampshire. Part of it.
I never thought you'd use it in regard to Donald Trump, because the man doesn't melt no matter what happens at this point. As you talk to the people in Iowa, do you get any sense, John, of what is going to drive them in the caucuses tonight? Not only whom they are voting for, but if they're going to change their mind, because that's what happens here with some of these undecideds. You try and get people to change their mind. Do you get any sense if anybody there is actually thinking about that, or are they pretty much, that's it, I know I'm voting for, no change?
All right. Marco Rubio's secret strength is that, according to the Des Moines Register poll, he's the second choice by far of more voters than anyone on the Republican field. However, working against him is the fact that if you're going to be for Donald Trump or you're going to be for Ted Cruz, you're not going to change your mind. These are the two anti-establishment candidates, as Dr. Hull made clear, and they are the two that basically voters will thumb their nose at Washington and the Republican establishment with. If Rubio is to gain, it has to be at the expense of Christie, Kasich, and the candidate who was once regarded as the front runner here, Jeb Bush.
You wrote in a column today on Newsmax.com that Iowa hinges on independents and evangelicals. John, we've heard an awful lot about the evangelical vote in the last week, but we haven't heard much about the independents. How many of them do you think there really are in Iowa?
Well, Pete Jeffrey, former press secretary to Speaker of the House Dennis Hastert, and himself a precinct chairman in West Des Moines, who is neutral in the race, said they comprise 40% of the voters here in the Hawkeye State. That's pretty impressive. They can request a ballot from either major party to go into a caucus. And Democrats could even vote in a Republican caucus if they change their registration on the spot. So there's a lot of under-the-radar factors. I think independents will participate if for no other reason there is such enthusiasm about this caucus that the turnout will transcend the 120,000 who gave Rick Santorum his eyelash-like win over Mitt Romney 4 years ago.
In 20 seconds left, John, the big question some people are asking, do you think that Ted Cruz has any momentum to overtake Donald Trump tonight?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Few people have worked as hard as Senator Cruz and courted that evangelical community. Some people will say he may win with a vote from his base. Well, if that's what it takes, That's what he and his supporters are clearly driving to do. And again, Trump supporters have enthusiasm. There's no argument. Do they actually have an organization, and are they familiar with the process?
There's the good question right there about the organization. You're exactly right. John Gizzi, we're going to talk to you later on this evening. Settle in, my friend. It's going to be a long night and an interesting night. Talk to you soon. Now, history needs to be made in Iowa tonight if certain candidates have a chance. That's next on The Hardline.